Hello everyone, welcome to the Bodhi Academy. I am Mahanta and today we will continue the class 9 science chapter 6 tissues. So we have already seen the plant tissues and we have started with the animal tissues. In animal tissues we have seen what are epithelial tissues and today we will start with connective tissue. So the function of connective tissue is to connect the various body parts or the organs in an animal. Now the connective tissues are specialized to connect the various body parts. It can connect bones to each other, muscles to bones, then bind tissues and give support to various parts of the body. The characteristics features of connective tissue cells are that they are living, they are loosely spaced and they are suspended in an intercellular matrix. Now this matrix can be jelly-like, fluid, dense or rigid based on the function of the particular connective tissue. Now there are various types of connective tissues, for example skeletal tissue, then fluid tissue. Let us begin. The first type is connective tissue proper. It is usually involved in the packaging function. The first one is areolar tissue. Now this tissue usually fills the space inside the organs and it supports the internal organs and helps in the repair of this tissue. Then there is fibrous tissue which is composed of tendons and ligaments. Now tendons will connect muscles with the skeletal tissue. For example, it will connect muscle to bone. Okay, so it connects muscle to skeletal tissue and it has quite the elasticity. Then ligaments will connect skeletal tissues with each other. That is, it will connect bone to bone and the tendons will connect bone to muscle. Let us see the difference between the tendons and ligaments. So tendon is a strong non-flexible tissue and ligament is elastic and flexible. Then tendon joins muscles to bones whereas ligaments join bone to bone. Then tendon is formed of white fibrous connective tissue. It is formed of white fibrous connective tissue and ligament is formed of yellow fibrous connective tissue. So this is the difference between tendons and ligaments. Then the next type of connective tissue is skeletal connective tissue. It is composed of cartilage and bone. Bone, as we know, is a very strong, non-flexible and rigid kind of tissue. It forms the framework that supports the body and other organs in the body. So it forms the framework that supports the body. It also anchors the muscles and supports the main organs of the body. Now it is very strong and non-flexible. It is rigid due to the presence of calcium and phosphorus. Due to the presence of phosphorus and calcium. The matrix of bone tissue is hard due to the presence of calcium and phosphorus. Then the second type of skeletal tissue is cartilage tissue. Now this is comparatively more softer and flexible and it supports and provides flexibility to the body parts and also smoothens the bone surface at joints. Now when two bones are joined together, at the edges or the end of the bones, this cartilage tissue is present which smoothens out the bone surface and helps in the joining. Now it is mainly present at the nose, ear, trachea and larynx part. As we know, we can bend the here this part of the nose because of the flexibility of cartilage. Similarly, we can bend our ears a bit because of presence of cartilage. Now another type of connective tissue is the adipose tissue. This adipose tissue is usually present below the skin and between the internal organs. Now the function of this adipose tissue is the storage of fat in our body. Now as it stores fat tissue, it also acts as an insulator. Because of this adipose tissue, we do not feel so cold, or we have an protective layer or insulation during the cold weather. Now the third type of connective tissue is the fluid connective tissue. This fluid connective tissue includes blood and lymph. As we know, blood is a fluid tissue, and it usually transports oxygen or different gases, digested food, hormones and waste material from one part or one organ of the body to other parts of the body. Now blood has a fluid or liquid matrix, and it is called as plasma. The matrix of blood is called as plasma, and it contains proteins, salts and hormones. Now this is the composition of blood plasma, and the red blood cells, white blood cells and platelet cells are suspended in this fluid matrix called plasma. So blood is composed of red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and all these cells are suspended in the matrix called plasma. Red blood cells are also called as RBCs, white blood cells are also called as WBCs. So the blood cells or blood corpuscles are RBCs, WBCs and blood platelets. So RBCs, the first one, RBCs helps in the transport of respiratory gases. So the red blood cells are usually involved in the transport of oxygen and carbon dioxide throughout the body. Then the WBCs or the leukocytes fight with diseases by producing antibodies. So WBCs produce antibodies to fight against any diseases which attack the organisms. Then the third type of cells, that is the platelet cells. They are involved in the blood clotting. That is when we get a wound or scratch and the blood spills out. These platelet cells form a clotting to stop the bleeding in the organisms. Then the second type of fluid connective tissue is the lymph tissue. Now this lymph tissue is colorless or white in color, and it has plasma and white blood cells. Now this lymph tissue lacks red blood cells, and function of lymph tissue is exchange of material between tissues and bloods, and also helps it also helps in protecting the body against infections. So as it has white blood cells, it also aids in the protection against infections, and then it is involved in the exchange of material between the blood and other tissues. Let us see the difference between blood and lymph tissue. So blood is red in color, whereas lymph tissue is white in color. Then blood flows in blood vessels, whereas lymph flows in lymph vessels. In blood, the red blood cells or RBCs are present, whereas in lymph tissue it lacks RBCs or erythrocytes. Red blood cells are also called as erythrocytes, and white blood cells are also called as leukocytes. Then we'll move forward. The next type of animal tissue is muscular tissue. The muscular tissue is classified into three types, that is voluntary tissue, involuntary tissue and cardiac muscular tissue. Now certain parts of our body or certain muscles we can move by a free will or by a conscience. That is, if we want to move our hand, we can move and also stop moving it, like so it is in our control. So these type of muscles are called voluntary muscles, whereas some movement in our body are out of our control. We cannot start or stop this movement. For example, the beating of a heart or the transport of food through a food canal or the esophagus. All these are involuntary actions. So the muscles which control these actions are called involuntary muscles. And then the cardiac muscles are those which are associated with the heart. These are the cells or the tissue which are only found on the wall of the heart. Let us see this tissue in detail. So muscular tissue consists of elongated cells called muscle fibers. So the muscular tissue cells are called muscle fibers. This tissue helps in various types of movement in our body parts and also the locomotion. That is, we are able to walk or move our hands. All this is because of muscular tissue. Then muscles contain special proteins called contractile proteins. The muscle cells have the presence of special proteins called contractile proteins, which contract and relax to facilitate the movement in our body. Now the first type of muscular tissue is the striated, stripe, voluntary or skeletal muscular tissue. Now these are called skeletal muscular tissue because they are mostly associated with the bones or the skeleton of the body. These muscles are usually attached to the bones, so they are called skeletal muscular tissue. Then they are called striated muscular tissue because of the presence of alternate light and dark bands or striations. As we can see here in this diagram, there are alternate light and dark tissues or dark bands present. As we can see, these cells have alternate light and dark bands or striations. That is why they are called as striated muscular tissue. Then these cells of this tissue are long. As we can see here in this diagram, they are long cells which are cylindrical in shape. So they are long cylindrical cells which are unbranched. As we can see, these cells do not have any branches and they are multinucleated. You can see here in this diagram, there are many nucleus in the same cell. So these are multinucleated cells or multicellular. Then the second type of muscular tissue are involuntary muscular tissue or smooth muscular tissue. These cells or this tissue is also called as unstriated muscular tissue due to the absence of striations. Now these are called involuntary muscular tissue because the movement is not controlled by a will. In voluntary muscular tissue, we can move the muscles at our will. Now these are called smooth muscular tissue because these remain attached to the smooth organs or the visceral organs in our body. That is the heart or lungs or digestive organs. So these are the smooth organs or visceral organs in our body, and the muscles which are attached to these organs are called as the smooth muscular cells or smooth muscular tissue. Now these cells have long pointed ends and are uninucleated. So as we can see here in this diagram, these cells have pointed ends, and these are long long spindle shaped. Like this shape is called a spindle shape. So these cells are long cells with pointed ends, and they are uninucleated. As you can see, there is a single nucleus for each cell. There is a single nucleus, so they are called uninucleated. Then they are found in the alimentary canal, the blood vessels, the iris of the eye, then uterus, and in the bronchi of the lungs. All these parts are the where the smooth muscles are found are involuntary. As the food in the alimentary canal, the movement of food is not controlled by us. Then the blood vessels, the flow of blood, then the movement of iris, all these are the movements which we cannot control, so they are called involuntary. The third type of connective or muscular tissue is called cardiac muscular tissue or striated involuntary muscular tissue. Cardiac muscular tissue is usually found restricted to the heart part, the organ heart. So it is usually found on the wall of the heart. It is not found anywhere else in our body. So striated involuntary muscle tissue, as we can see in this diagram, are long, tubular and branched. As we can see here, they are branched to each other. So these cells are long, striated. There are striations present here, and they are branched. Then they are called striated involuntary because of the presence of striations and the movement which is not controlled by our will. So these heart muscles are cylindrical and branched, and they are uninucleated. As you can see here, each cell has only one nucleus. Each cell over here has only one nucleus present, so they are called uninucleated. Now this is about the muscular tissue. The next type of tissue is the nervous tissue. Now this nervous tissue is usually responsible for the or usually associated with the stimulus and the body function, the reaction to the stimulus. Now nervous tissue is composed of cells called nerve cells or neurons. The cells of nervous tissue are called nerve cells or neurons. Here is the diagram of a neuron. We will see all the parts that a neuron or a nerve cell has. Now nerve cells are highly specialized cells. They are highly specialized for being stimulated and then transmitting the stimulus to various parts of the bodies very rapidly. Okay. Now all the cells have some ability to sense stimuli, but the nervous cells are highly specialized to being stimulated and then transmitting the stimulus further. Now the brain and the spinal cord are composed of nervous tissue. That is, they are composed of these nerve cells. Then each nerve cell or neuron has three parts. That is, the cell body, the dendrites and the axon. The cell body or cyton has a large central nucleus and cytoplasm. This cell body has a large central nucleus and it has a presence of cytoplasm. Now from this cytoplasm, long thin hair-like parts arise. Okay, as you can see here, there is a rise of long thin hair-like structures from this cell body. Then the dendrite, the second part of neuron, that is the dendrite, has short branched fibers. As we can see in this diagram, the dendrite are the small or short hair like fibers. Here, these are the dendrites. These are short hair-like structures or branched fibers of neuron which receives the nerve impulse. Now, these are the parts which will receive the stimulus or the nerve impulse. This will collect the nerve impulse and then it will be transferred from the cell body towards the axon. The third part, which is the axon. The axon is a single long conducting fiber extending from neuron that transmits impulse away from the cell body. Now this axon is a conducting fiber. It is a long conducting fiber, means it will transmit the nerve impulse which is collected by dendrite from one cell to another cell. There will be the next neuron or next nerve cell will be present around here. The axons. Now this axon will transmit the nerve impulse from one neuron to another. This transmit away from the cell body. Now it will collect the nerve impulse from the cell body and transmit in this direction towards the next nerve cells or the next neuron. Let us see the function of nerve cells. Now it controls all the body activities, as everything, the movement or our reflexes or actions are based on these nerve impulses, and so these all the body activities are controlled by this nerve system or the neurons. Then it coordinates among various body parts during any body function. These neurons coordinate among the various body parts or body organs during body function. Then dendrites carry nerve impulse towards the cytons. As I have already said, these dendrites will collect the nerve impulse and they will carry it towards the cell body or the cyton, whereas the axon will carry the nerve impulse away from the cyton. So the axon will carry the nerve impulse away from the cyton. Then synapse. So synapse or a synapse is a junction or region of union of axon of one neuron with the dendrite of another, through which nerve impulse is transferred. Now it is the region. Now this region, so this region where there is union of axon of one neuron. So here we can see the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of other neuron. Here the dendrite of other neuron. These meet together to transmit the nervous impulse with the dendrite of other neuron, through which the nerve impulse is transferred. So the nerve impulse is transmitted through this region and the region is called synapse or synapse. Let us see the difference between axon and dendrite. So axon, it is always single in number, and whereas dendrite may be one or more in number. Axon is a long, it is long and may or may not be branched, whereas dendrite is small sized and it is always branched, as we have already seen in the diagram. Then it conduct nerve impulse away from cyton and it conduct nerve impulse towards the cyton. We have already seen, for example, if these are the dendrons, these will collect the nerve impulse and carry it towards the cyton or the cell body, and the axon will move it away from the cell body. Then nerve impulse or the nervous stimuli is the information in the form of chemical or electrical signal which passes through the neurons. Now this is all in the chapter tissues. We have completed this chapter. We have seen in detail the plant and various types of plant and animal tissues. So this is where we will conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share and subscribe to the Bodhi Academy.